What if everything you believed about reality was wrong, and the only way to find truth was to doubt absolutely everything, your senses, your memories, even your own existence, until you discovered the one thing that could never be questioned? Tonight, we follow René Descartes, the French philosopher who dared to tear down the entire edifice of human knowledge and rebuild it from scratch. In his solitude, he discovered a truth so simple, yet so profound, that it would echo through 4 centuries and still whispers to us in our quietest moments of self-reflection. In the winter of 1619, a young soldier seeking warmth in a German stove room will experience 3 dreams that transform not just his life, but the entire trajectory of Western thought. As the years unfold, this restless mind will wander through the great cities of Europe, always searching, always questioning, until in Dutch exile he strips away every comfortable assumption to reach bedrock certainty. But when his method of radical doubt threatens the very foundations of religious and academic authority, he must choose between truth and safety, between the revolutionary implications of his discoveries and the peaceful solitude he craves. And in the end, as Swedish snow falls on a dying philosopher far from home, we'll discover how his final confrontation with the mind-body problem he created becomes his most profound meditation on what it means to be human. So settle back now, let the day's certainties dissolve, and join me in following the hermit who cracked the code of existence, whose journey from doubt to understanding lights a path we can still walk tonight. Born into the minor nobility of 1596 France, young René breathes the air of a world where ancient authorities, Aristotle, the church, tradition itself, dictate what men should think and believe. The stone walls of his family's manor house in La Haye echo with certainties passed down through generations, each one as solid and unquestioned as the Latin prayers murmured at dawn. His father Joachim serves as a councillor in the Parliament of Brittany, a man of law and order who sees the world through the lens of precedent and protocol. In this household, truth comes pre-packaged, delivered by priests and professors, sealed with the wax of institutional authority. Yet even as a child, René carries within him a peculiar restlessness, perhaps born from the absence that shapes his earliest days. His mother, Jeanne Brochard, dies when he's barely a year old, leaving behind only the faintest impression of warmth before the world turns cold. His grandmother takes him in, and in her care he learns a different kind of lesson, that life's most fundamental experiences, loss and loneliness, cannot be explained by syllogisms or soothed by catechisms. This early independence, forced upon him by circumstance, plants the first seeds of a mind that will one day question everything. At the Jesuit College of La Flèche, young Descartes finds himself surrounded by the finest education France can offer. The Jesuits, those soldiers of the Counter-Reformation, pride themselves on intellectual rigor, and René excels in their demanding curriculum. Mathematics becomes his sanctuary, a realm where truth reveals itself through elegant proofs rather than appeals to authority. In geometry, he discovers something extraordinary, conclusions that must be true. Not because Euclid said so, but because the mind itself cannot conceive them otherwise. The clarity intoxicates him. But in philosophy classes, he encounters something troubling. His teachers speak with absolute confidence about the nature of reality, the composition of matter, the workings of the soul. Yet when he compares their teachings to those of other schools, he finds not harmony, but cacophony. The Aristotelians say one thing, the Platonists another, the Stoics something else entirely. How can truth contradict itself? How can learned men, all claiming access to ultimate reality, arrive at such different destinations? The more he studies, the more the solid ground of certainty seems to shift beneath his feet like sand. His father expects him to follow a respectable path, to take his degrees in law and join the ranks of provincial administrators who keep the machinery of France running smoothly. René dutifully completes his legal studies at the University of Poitiers, but his heart isn't in it. While his classmates debate property rights and inheritance law, his mind wanders to more fundamental questions. What is property really? What is a person? What is anything at all? And how can we know? The law assumes so much, takes so much for granted. But what if those assumptions rest on nothing but habit and hope? The decision to abandon law for military service shocks his family. A Descartes becoming a soldier? Not for glory or advancement, they soon realize, but for something his father cannot understand. The desire to read what he calls the great book of the world. As a gentleman volunteer in the army of Prince Maurice of Nassau, René can travel, observe, encounter different peoples with different certainties. Perhaps somewhere in the wide world, he might find truths that transcend the provincial prejudices of his homeland. The military life suits his purposes perfectly. Between campaigns, there's time to think, to write, to wrestle with the questions that consume him. He serves with distinction, but without enthusiasm. His real battles fought not on muddy fields, but in the quiet chambers of his mind. When he transfers to the service of Duke Maximilian of Bavaria, he enters the heart of the religious conflicts tearing Europe apart. The 30 Years' War has begun. Catholic against Protestant, each side absolutely certain that God stands with them alone. The horror of it strikes him deeply. In the name of truth, men hack each other to pieces. For the sake of doctrines about transubstantiation or predestination, ideas so abstract that most soldiers couldn't explain them, entire villages burn. He watches men die clutching different crosses, calling on the same God in different languages, each convinced that their enemies are damned. If religious certainty can produce such carnage, what good is certainty? If men can be so sure and so wrong, how can anyone trust in being sure at all? Winter comes early in 1619, and the armies settle into their quarters. Near Ulm, Descartes finds himself billeted in a house with a large ceramic stove, a pole that radiates warmth through the cold German nights. On November 10th, with snow falling softly outside and no duties to distract him, he dismisses his servant and settles in for a night of solitary contemplation. The warmth wraps around him like a cocoon, the silence broken only by the occasional crack of burning wood. In this perfect isolation, something extraordinary begins to happen. He starts with a simple question. What can I know for certain? Not what have I been taught, not what seems probable, not what authority figures proclaim, but what can I, René Descartes, know beyond any possibility of doubt? The question seems simple, but as he pursues it, the floor begins to fall away beneath him. Can he trust his senses? No, they've deceived him before. Distant towers that looked round prove square on approach. Dreams feel real until he wakes. Can he trust his reasoning? Perhaps not. He's made errors in calculation before, been certain of conclusions that later proved false. The doubt spreads like a dark tide, swallowing everything in its path. Maybe the entire external world is an illusion. Maybe his memories are false, implanted by some deceiving power. Maybe even the truths of mathematics, those beloved certainties, are mere tricks played on a deluded mind. The warmth of the stove feels real. But what is feeling? His own body seems present, but what is presence? The spiral of skepticism pulls him down, down, into a philosophical abyss where nothing solid remains. Then sleep takes him, and in sleep come dreams unlike any he's experienced before. The first fills him with terror. He's walking against a violent wind, unable to stand straight, while others around him walk easily. Phantoms pursue him, and he seeks refuge in a college chapel, but even there he finds no peace. He wakes with his heart pounding, the philosophical demons of his waking thoughts transformed into literal specters. Is this what happens when one questions too deeply? Is madness the price of radical doubt? He prays, trying to calm himself, then drifts back to sleep. The second dream brings a tremendous thunderclap that seems to split the darkness. His room fills with sparks of fire, tiny points of light dancing in the air. But instead of terror, he feels something else, illumination. As if the thunder has cracked open the sky of his understanding. The sparks aren't destructive, but revelatory, each one a small truth glowing in the darkness of uncertainty. The third dream is gentler, but no less significant. He finds himself with two books, a dictionary and an anthology of poetry. The dictionary represents complete and perfect knowledge, every concept defined with precision. The poetry book falls open to a verse by Ausonius. What path shall I follow in life? A stranger appears and offers another verse, yes and no. The dream fills him with a strange peace. a sense that he's being shown something crucial about the nature of knowledge itself. When dawn comes, Descartes remains in his warm room, trembling not from cold, but from the magnitude of what he's experienced. He interprets the dreams as a divine commission, a calling to reconstruct human knowledge from the ground up. The violent wind represents the force of old errors trying to keep him from the truth. The thunder and sparks signify the flash of insight that can illuminate genuine understanding. The book suggests that true wisdom must combine the precision of definition with the beauty of meaning, analysis with synthesis, doubt with eventual certainty. He makes a vow that morning, still wrapped in the stove's warmth but now burning with an inner fire. He will develop a new method of thinking, one that begins with radical doubt but doesn't end there. He will tear down the entire edifice of human knowledge and rebuild it on foundations so solid that no skepticism can shake them. Mathematics will be his model, not the mathematics of mere calculation, but the deeper mathematical spirit that demands proof, clarity, absolute certainty. This moment in the German stove-room becomes his philosophical birth, his intellectual Damascus road. The restless young soldier dies that night, and in his place rises something new, a man with a mission to revolutionize human thought. He envisions a universal mathematics that could bring geometric certainty to every field of inquiry. Philosophy, physics, medicine, even ethics and morals, all could be reconstructed with mathematical rigor, freed from the prejudices of tradition and the deceptions of false authority. As he finally emerges from his retreat, blinking in the winter sunlight, René Descartes carries with him the seeds of a revolution. He doesn't yet know how his method will work in detail, doesn't yet see all the implications of his vision, but he knows with absolute certainty, perhaps the only absolute certainty he now possesses, that his life's work has begun. The comfortable certainties of his youth lie in ruins, but from those ruins, something magnificent will rise. The path ahead stretches long and uncertain. Years of wandering await him, years of testing his method against the complexities of the world. He will need to find the perfect balance between solitude and engagement, between the safety necessary for radical thinking and the intellectual community necessary for testing ideas. The young man who entered that stove-heated room seeking warmth has found instead a fire that will burn for the rest of his days, the pure flame of philosophical inquiry, dangerous and purifying in equal measure. But first, he must leave the armies behind, leave the violence and certainty of religious war for a different kind of battle. The enemies now are not Protestant princes or Catholic generals, but the far more formidable foes that lurk in every human mind: prejudice, assumption, the comfortable laziness of accepting what we're told. His weapons will be not sword and musket, but logic and method, careful reasoning and systematic doubt. As Descartes prepares to abandon military life and embark on his true calling, one question haunts him, a question that will drive everything that follows. If he succeeds in doubting everything, in tearing down every certainty, what will be left? In the rubble of demolished beliefs, can anything survive? Or will his method, like some philosophical acid, dissolve even the container that holds it? The answer to that question waits somewhere in the years ahead, hidden in the solitary rooms and careful meditations that will become his life. The search for that answer, for the one truth that cannot be doubted, has only just begun. His years of wandering begin not with dramatic departure, but with quiet dissolution. The soldier's uniform hangs in a wardrobe, gradually forgotten, as Descartes drifts from city to city like smoke through European streets. Amsterdam, Paris, Venice, each offers its own flavor of human certainty, its own particular blindness. He watches Dutch merchants calculate profits with absolute precision while remaining utterly confused about the nature of value itself. In Venetian salons, brilliant minds debate the properties of light while sitting in darkness about their own consciousness. The great book of the world proves as contradictory as any library, but its lessons cut deeper because they're written in living flesh and daily bread. Paris draws him back repeatedly, that glittering center of intellectual ferment where new ideas bubble up like champagne. The salons overflow with mathematicians and theologians, natural philosophers and poets, all talking at once, all certain they possess the key to unlock reality's secrets. Descartes attends these gatherings like an anthropologist studying an exotic tribe. He watches Roberval and Fermat duel with mathematical proofs, each trying to outshine the other with increasingly complex demonstrations. The brilliance dazzles, but underneath the sparkle, he detects something hollow. They manipulate symbols with breathtaking skill, but never ask what the symbols mean, never question whether their elaborate constructions touch reality at all. Only in Marin Mersenne does he find a kindred spirit. The minim friar, with his gentle manner and encyclopedic mind, shares Descartes' vision of mathematics as more than mere calculation. In Mersenne's cell at the Place Royale monastery, surrounded by manuscripts and mathematical instruments, they spend hours exploring how numerical relationships might illuminate divine truth. Mersenne becomes his intellectual confessor, the one person who understands both the ambition and the danger of Descartes' project. Through their correspondence, which will span decades and thousands of pages, ideas flow back and forth like blood between connected hearts. When Descartes writes of his doubts, Mersenne responds with encouragement. When isolation threatens to drive him mad, Mersenne's letters provide the human connection that keeps him anchored to sanity. Yet even this friendship cannot satisfy his deepest need, the need for silence, for space to think without interruption. Paris exhausts him with its demands, its social obligations, its endless chatter. He requires something more radical than occasional retreat. In 1628, at 32, he makes a decision that shocks everyone who knows him. He will leave France entirely, abandoning the familiar for the uncertain freedom of the Dutch Republic. While others seek fame and position in the glittering courts of Europe, Descartes seeks only the liberty to think dangerous thoughts in peace. Holland welcomes him with its peculiar combination of bustle and tolerance. The Dutch, focused on commerce and practical matters, care little for abstract philosophy as long as it doesn't disturb trade. Their religious tolerance, born from exhaustion with sectarian violence, creates pockets of intellectual freedom unknown in Catholic France or Protestant Germany. Descartes settles first in Franeker, then Leiden, then Amsterdam, never staying long enough to grow roots. He becomes a ghost haunting rented rooms, known to landlords as the quiet Frenchman who keeps odd hours and receives many letters, but few visitors. His daily routine takes on an almost mechanical precision, as if he's turning himself into one of the clockwork devices he so admires. He rises late, often past noon, having spent the morning hours in bed, not sleeping but thinking. These horizontal meditations, conducted in the warmth of blankets while the Dutch winter rattles the windows, become his most productive time. Ideas flow more freely when the body rests, when the tyranny of upright posture no longer constrains the mind. His servant knows not to disturb these morning reveries for any reason short of fire. Afternoons bring correspondence, letters to Mersenne, to other mathematicians, to curious nobles who've heard of the strange Frenchman pursuing wisdom in exile. He writes carefully, aware that his words will be copied, shared, debated in places he'll never see. Each letter becomes a small essay, a test balloon for ideas that might later appear in published works. Through this epistolary network, he maintains connection with European intellectual life while preserving the physical distance essential to his work. Evenings belong to mathematics and meditation. He fills page after page with geometric proofs, algebraic transformations, diagrams that map the invisible architecture of thought itself. But increasingly, his attention turns from mathematical objects to the mind that contemplates them. What is this thing that thinks? How can he be certain it exists? The questions that haunted him in the German stove room return with new urgency, demanding answers he's finally ready to pursue. The method of doubt emerges slowly, like a sculptor's figure from marble. He doesn't invent it so much as discover it, hidden within the logic of his own questioning. If he wants certain knowledge, he must first clear away all uncertainty. But how far can doubt extend? Can he doubt the existence of the external world? Yes, perhaps he's dreaming. Can he doubt mathematical truths? Perhaps. Maybe an evil demon deceives him every time he adds 2 and 3. Can he doubt his own memories? Certainly. Memory plays tricks constantly. The spiral of skepticism terrifies him. Some nights, alone in his rented rooms with only a candle for company, he feels the foundations of reality dissolving beneath him. To doubt God's existence, even methodologically, feels like blasphemy. To question the reality of the physical world seems like madness. Yet he pushes forward, driven by a conviction that truth can only emerge from this deliberate destruction of comfortable assumptions. Like a man setting fire to his own house to test which beams will survive, he subjects every belief to the flames of radical doubt. Then comes the breakthrough, simple and devastating. Even if an evil demon deceives him about everything else, even if the entire universe is illusion, one fact remains indubitable. He is doubting. And if he doubts, he thinks. And if he thinks, he must exist as a thinking thing. The cogito isn't discovered through complex reasoning, but through direct intuition, a truth so immediate that to understand it is to accept it. I think, therefore I am, not a logical deduction, but a philosophical lightning strike, illuminating the one patch of solid ground in an ocean of uncertainty. From this single certainty, reconstruction begins. If he exists as a thinking thing, what else can he know? He examines his own consciousness like a naturalist studying a new species. He finds ideas there, ideas of physical objects, mathematical relationships, moral principles. Most importantly, he finds the idea of perfection, of a being unlimited by the constraints that bind him. This idea puzzles him. How can he, an imperfect being, conceive of perfection? The idea must come from outside, planted in his mind by something actually perfect, God. The proof satisfies him, though he knows others will object. But from God's existence flows another crucial certainty, divine benevolence. A perfect being cannot be a deceiver, which means the faculties God gave him, reason, perception, memory, must be reliable when properly used. Error comes not from flawed equipment, but from hasty judgment, from the will outrunning the understanding. Clear and distinct perceptions can be trusted. Confusion comes from accepting the unclear and indistinct. With these tools, he begins rebuilding the edifice of knowledge. The external world exists because God wouldn't allow systematic deception about something so fundamental. But what is this external world? Here, his years of mathematical training pay dividends. The physical world, stripped of subjective qualities like color and taste, reveals itself as pure extension, matter in motion, governed by mathematical laws. Everything from planetary orbits to animal behavior can be explained mechanistically, without invoking mysterious purposes or occult qualities. This vision of nature as a vast machine thrills and disturbs him equally. It promises unlimited scientific progress, the ability to understand and control natural phenomena through mathematical analysis. But it also raises troubling questions. If animals are merely complex automata, what makes humans different? The answer must lie in the soul, the thinking substance that uses the body but isn't reducible to it. Mind and matter become two distinct realms, touching at some mysterious point he locates, somewhat desperately, in the pineal gland. His work on optics demonstrates the power of his method. By treating light as particle motion and the eye as an optical instrument, he derives the law of refraction that had eluded investigators for centuries. He explains rainbows not through poetic metaphor, but geometric analysis, showing how droplets of water bend and separate white light into its component colors. Nature's most beautiful phenomena yield to mathematical description, their mystery dissolved in the acid of rational analysis. The coordinate geometry that bears his name emerges almost as an afterthought, a tool for solving specific problems that reveals itself as revolutionary. By assigning numerical coordinates to points in space, he shows that geometric curves can be described by algebraic equations. A circle becomes x squared plus y squared equals r squared, its essence captured in symbols. This marriage of algebra and geometry opens new continents in mathematics, allowing problems unsolvable in one domain to be conquered through translation to the other. He dissects cadavers with the same methodical precision, seeking to understand how the immaterial soul interfaces with material flesh. The nervous system fascinates him, those delicate threads carrying messages between mind and muscle. He develops elaborate hydraulic theories, imagining animal spirits flowing through neural tubes like water through pipes. The human body becomes another machine, extraordinarily complex, but ultimately comprehensible through mechanical principles. Yet even as his system grows more elaborate, cracks appear in its foundation. Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia, brilliant and persistent, poses questions he cannot easily answer. If mind and body are utterly distinct, how do they interact? How does immaterial will produce material motion? How do physical impacts create mental sensations? Her letters, respectful but relentless, force him to confront the central weakness of his dualism. He responds with increasingly convoluted explanations, but both of them know he's struggling. The princess pushes him toward practical philosophy, asking how his abstract principles apply to real human problems. How should one deal with persistent sadness? How can reason control passion when passion seems so much stronger? These questions matter more to her, exiled and impoverished, than metaphysical speculations. Descartes finds himself drawn into discussions of ethics and emotion that his system seems ill-equipped to handle. The messy realities of human life resist the clean divisions his method demands. His masterwork, The World, grows in manuscript pages, a complete system of natural philosophy based on mechanical principles. He explains everything from the formation of planets to the beating of hearts, all through matter in motion. But in 1633, news arrives that shatters his confidence. Galileo, the great Italian scientist, has been condemned by the Inquisition for defending Copernican astronomy. The same heliocentric view runs through Descartes' treatise like a golden thread. To publish would invite similar persecution. The decision torments him. His life's work sits complete in his desk, ready to revolutionize human understanding. But he values his peace, his freedom to continue thinking, more than glory or influence. With a heavy heart, he locks the manuscript away. Friends urge him to publish anyway, to stand for truth against oppression, but Descartes knows himself too well. He lacks the martyr's temperament, the willingness to suffer for abstract principles. The world will have to wait for his world. This act of self-censorship reveals the fundamental tension in his character. The radical philosopher who dismantles all traditional certainties is also the cautious gentleman who avoids controversy. The systematic doubter who questions God's existence also wants to remain in the Church's good graces. He pursues truth relentlessly in private while carefully managing his public persona. Some will call this cowardice, others prudence. Perhaps it's simply human, this desire to revolutionize thought while maintaining a comfortable life. As the 1630s draw to a close, Descartes stands at a crossroads. His method is complete, his major discoveries made. But they remain largely unknown outside his correspondence circle. The time has come to emerge from his self-imposed exile to share his vision with the world. Yet he knows that publication will end his peaceful obscurity, drawing attacks from theologians, academics, and traditionalists of every stripe. The comfortable routine of his Dutch years, the quiet mornings of horizontal meditation, the undisturbed evenings of mathematical contemplation, all will be sacrificed once his ideas enter the public arena. He begins preparing his thoughts for presentation, not as academic treatises, but as something more personal and accessible. If he cannot publish The World, perhaps he can share his method, invite readers to join his intellectual journey rather than commanding their assent. The idea of philosophical autobiography appeals to him, showing not just conclusions, but the path that led to them. Let readers experience the doubt, the breakthrough, the reconstruction for themselves. The Dutch years have given him what he sought, the freedom to think, the solitude to develop his ideas without interference. But solitude has its own weight, its own darkness. Sometimes, in the long northern nights, he wonders if his systematic doubt has cut him off from more than just false beliefs. Has his method, so powerful for understanding the physical world, somehow diminished his capacity for the immediate, the intuitive, the simply human? These questions hover at the edges of his consciousness as he prepares to step from the shadows into the harsh light of public scrutiny. The hermit must become, however reluctantly, a prophet. The private revolutionary must risk becoming a public figure, with all the misunderstanding and conflict that transformation will bring. The publication arrives like dawn after the longest night. In 1637, after years of solitary refinement, Descartes releases his Discourse on Method into the world, not as a thunderclap of dogma, but as a gentle invitation. A philosopher sharing his personal journey, rather than commanding assent. The choice to write in French rather than Latin speaks volumes, while his academic peers cling to the ancient language of authority. He opens philosophy's doors to anyone who can read their native tongue. In Parisian salons and Dutch coffee houses, merchants and educated women encounter ideas, previously locked away in university towers. The method itself appears deceptively simple, like a child's drawing that contains profound truths. 4 rules only: accept nothing without clear evidence, divide complex problems into manageable pieces, build from simple to complex, and review everything to ensure completeness. Yet within this simplicity lies revolution. No longer must truth come stamped with institutional approval. Each thinking person carries within themselves the tools for discovering certainty. The implications ripple outward like stones dropped in still water. 3 essays accompany the method, demonstrations rather than declarations. In Dioptrics, he explains how light bends through lenses, revealing the mechanics of vision itself. Meteorology strips weather of its mystery, showing how rainbows form through purely natural processes. Geometry marries algebra to shapes, letting equations describe curves that previously existed only as visual intuitions. Each essay proves his point. The method works, producing real knowledge about real phenomena. The mathematical breakthrough alone would secure his fame. By assigning numbers to points in space, he transforms geometry from a visual art into an algebraic science. A circle becomes x squared plus y squared equals r squared, its perfect roundness captured in symbols. Curves that ancient mathematicians could only approximate now yield their secrets to calculation. 2 separate realms of mathematics merge into one, doubling the power of each. Students centuries later will curse and bless his name as they struggle with coordinate planes. Success brings scrutiny, and scrutiny brings conflict. Protestant theologians in Holland denounce his method of doubt as a gateway to atheism. How dare he question everything, even temporarily? Catholic authorities worry that his mechanical universe leaves no room for divine intervention. If nature operates like clockwork, where is God's guiding hand? Academic philosophers, comfortable in their Aristotelian categories, rage against this upstart who ignores centuries of careful distinctions. The attacks come from all directions, yet they only spread his fame. Young minds across Europe seize upon his ideas with revolutionary fervor. In Paris, groups gather to work through his method together, experiencing the journey from doubt to certainty. In Leiden, medical students apply mechanical principles to understand the body. In Prague, mathematicians explore the new geometric algebraic fusion. The old guard watches in horror as their carefully maintained systems crumble before this French invader who fights with reason rather than rhetoric. The Meditations on First Philosophy emerges in 1641 as his definitive statement, deeper and more systematic than the discourse. 6 days of intellectual retreat, each building on the last guide readers through the same transformative process he experienced in that German stoveroom. But now the raw experience has been refined, polished, made accessible to any willing mind. The first meditation strips away every uncertain belief with surgical precision. Custom, tradition, sensory evidence, all fall before methodical doubt. The second meditation reaches the bedrock. Even if an evil demon deceives him about everything else, he cannot doubt that he doubts. The cogito emerges not as logical deduction, but as lived certainty, immediate and undeniable. I think, therefore I am. Not just words, but an experience available to every reader who follows the meditative path. From this single point of absolute certainty, reconstruction begins. The thinking self exists, but what else? The third meditation tackles the thorny question of God's existence. Within his consciousness, Descartes finds an idea that puzzles him, the concept of infinite perfection. How can he, finite and flawed, generate such an idea? It must come from outside, planted by something actually infinite and perfect. The argument satisfies him, though critics will debate its validity for centuries. But for his system, God's existence proves crucial. A perfect being cannot deceive the eye. which means human faculties, when properly used, can discover truth. Error enters through hasty judgment, through the will outrunning the understanding. The fourth meditation locates human fallibility not in flawed equipment, but in its misuse. We err when we affirm more than we clearly perceive, when we let desire or prejudice cloud rational judgment. Freedom brings responsibility. The power to choose includes the power to choose wrongly. Yet this very capacity for error confirms our dignity as rational beings, rather than programmed automata. Mathematical truths occupy the fifth meditation. The properties of triangles, the relationships between numbers, these exist eternally, independent of human minds, yet accessible to human reason. Even if no perfect triangle exists in nature, its properties remain invariant. This realm of eternal truths provides another bridge to God's existence. Such timeless realities require a timeless source, a divine mind in which they subsist. Mathematics becomes theology by another route. The final meditation returns to the physical world, now secured by divine guarantee. Bodies exist as extended substance, known through clear and distinct ideas of size, shape, and motion. But humans are not pure minds trapped in alien matter. The union of soul and body, mysterious though it remains, defines human experience. Pain warns of bodily damage. Pleasure encourages beneficial activities. Emotions arise from this psychophysical unity, neither purely mental nor purely physical, but irreducibly both. He includes objections from the finest minds of Europe, Hobbes, Gassendi, Arnaud, along with his replies. These exchanges reveal both his intellectual courage and his limitations. When pressed on how immaterial mind interacts with material body, his answers grow increasingly strained. The pineal gland, that tiny organ deep in the brain, bears too much philosophical weight. Critics sense the weakness, probing the gap between mental volition and physical action. Princess Elizabeth's letters had exposed this flaw. Public debate magnifies it. Yet the work succeeds brilliantly in its main objective. Philosophy need no longer bow to tradition or authority. Each person possesses the tools for discovering truth through methodical thinking. The Meditations provides not just conclusions, but a replicable process, a philosophical laboratory where readers conduct their own experiments in doubt and certainty. Universities across Europe split between Cartesians and anti-Cartesians, the new philosophy challenging centuries of scholastic tradition. His influence spreads beyond philosophy proper, into theology, science, even politics. If individuals can discover truth through reason, why should they accept inherited authorities in other realms? The same critical spirit that questions Aristotelian physics might question absolute monarchy or religious orthodoxy. Conservatives recognize the threat immediately. This mild-mannered mathematician has lit a fuse that will explode beneath every established institution. Young Spinoza in Amsterdam reads the Meditations and sees both its power and its flaws. The method of geometric reasoning applied to philosophy thrills him, but the dualism of mind and body seems an unnecessary complication. Perhaps only one substance exists, appearing as both thought and extension. Leibniz, brilliant and ambitious, admires the systematic approach while developing his own solutions to the problems Descartes raised. The next generation builds on Cartesian foundations, even while dismantling parts of the structure. Scientific revolutionaries embrace his mechanical philosophy while discarding specific theories. The universe as machine, governed by mathematical laws, this vision propels investigation forward. Boyle applies it to chemistry, Huygens to physics, Harvey to blood circulation. Even when particular Cartesian explanations prove wrong, the underlying approach remains fruitful. Nature yields her secrets to mathematical analysis, combined with careful observation. Religious responses vary wildly. Jansenists adopt his sharp distinction between mind and matter to defend human dignity against materialist reduction. Jesuits, despite their initial suspicion, find his proofs of God useful in combating atheism, but church authorities remain nervous about his method of doubt, his confidence in individual reason. The Index of Forbidden Books receives his works, though enforcement varies by region. In Protestant Holland, theological faculties wage bitter campaigns against Cartesian philosophy, seeing it as a threat to Reformed orthodoxy. The mind-body problem he bequeathed to philosophy refuses easy solution. How does immaterial will produce material motion? How do physical impacts create mental sensations? Every proposed answer generates new puzzles. Occasionalists like Malebranche suggest that God intervenes at every moment, coordinating mental and physical events. Spinoza's monism eliminates the problem by denying the fundamental distinction. Leibniz's pre-established harmony has mind and body running in parallel, like synchronized clocks. Each solution satisfies some while striking others as absurd. His correspondence network buzzes with activity as his fame spreads. Letters arrive from across Europe seeking clarification, offering objections, proposing applications of his method to new domains. He responds carefully, aware that his words will be copied and circulated. Through this epistolary web, Cartesian philosophy spreads faster than published books could carry it. Ideas mutate and evolve as they pass from mind to mind, the original doctrine fracturing into schools and interpretations. Queen Christina of Sweden enters this story like a force of nature. Young, brilliant, and restless, she collects intellectuals like others collect jewels. Her invitation flatters Descartes, a queen seeking his wisdom, but friends warn against accepting. Stockholm's harsh climate and demanding court life threaten his carefully maintained routine, yet vanity wins. The hermit philosopher, after decades of self-imposed exile, cannot resist the call to influence royalty. He accepts sealing his fate. The Swedish adventure begins badly and worsens rapidly. Christina demands philosophy lessons at 5 in the morning, shattering his lifelong habit of late rising and morning meditation. The castle's cold penetrates everywhere. No Dutch stove warms these drafty halls. Courtiers resent this foreign intellectual, who monopolizes their queen's attention. He writes to friends of his misery, his inability to think clearly in such conditions. The philosophical conversations he anticipated devolve into performances for Christina's amusement. Within months, the inevitable occurs. Weakened by cold and exhaustion, he contracts pneumonia. The illness progresses rapidly in his compromised state. As February 1650 dawns bitter and dark, René Descartes faces the final test of his philosophy. Does the certainty of the cogito comfort him as death approaches? Do his proofs of the soul's immortality ease the transition? He remains lucid almost to the end, discussing his condition with philosophical detachment. The thinking thing contemplates its own dissolution. His last words, reported variously by witnesses, concern his soul's destiny. The man who split mind from body now faces their ultimate separation. On February 11, 1650, in a foreign land far from the solitary rooms where his great insights emerged, Descartes dies. The queen he came to tutor barely mourns him. His body, like those he dissected seeking knowledge, becomes mere extended substance. But his ideas, those clear and distinct perceptions he fought so hard to articulate, have already taken flight. The hermit's code spreads across Europe and beyond, cracking open new ways of understanding existence itself. The revolution he began in that warm German room continues its work, transforming how human beings think about thinking, know about knowing, exist in the very fact of being. The Swedish court proves a cruel finale to a life spent seeking warmth and solitude. Christina's demands shatter the careful rhythms that sustained his philosophical work, those precious morning hours of horizontal meditation, replaced by pre-dawn trudges through frozen corridors. The queen, brilliant but capricious, treats philosophy like entertainment, demanding performances rather than genuine inquiry. Courtiers whisper behind raised hands about the strange Frenchman who speaks of thinking substances while shivering in their midst. Within weeks, the cold penetrates not just his chambers, but his very bones. And by February 1650, pneumonia grips the lungs that had breathed so many revolutionary ideas into being. As death approaches, Descartes faces the ultimate test of his philosophy. The man who split mind from body now confronts their final separation. Witnesses report his remarkable composure, discussing his condition with the same analytical precision he once applied to rainbows and refractions. His last recorded words concern his soul's destiny, that immaterial substance whose existence he'd staked his life's work upon. On February 11th, In a foreign land, far from the solitary rooms where insight bloomed, the thinking thing contemplates its own dissolution. The irony strikes observers immediately. The philosopher of mind-body dualism, killed by bodily weakness in service to worldly ambition. Yet even as his body fails, his ideas soar beyond any earthly court. Across Europe, university halls split between Cartesians and anti-Cartesians. The new philosophy challenging centuries of comfortable assumption. Young minds seize upon his method like a key to locked doors. Medical students in Leiden dissect cadavers with new eyes, seeing mechanical pumps where mystery once reigned. Mathematicians in Prague explore the marriage of algebra and geometry, curves yielding their secrets to equations. The coordinate system that bears his name transforms not just mathematics but human capability itself, making possible everything from Newton's celestial mechanics to the computer graphics of our digital age. The mind-body problem he bequeathed refuses easy solution, spawning philosophical dynasties. Spinoza, reading in Amsterdam, admires the geometric method while rejecting the dualist foundation. Perhaps only one substance exists, appearing as both thought and extension. Malebranche proposes divine intervention at every moment, God coordinating mental will with physical action like a cosmic puppeteer. Leibniz imagines pre-established harmony, parallel clocks ticking in synchrony without interaction. Each solution satisfies some while striking others as absurd. The debate echoes through centuries of philosophy seminars and midnight conversations. Religious authorities eye his legacy with deep ambivalence. The method of doubt that begins by questioning God's existence horrifies orthodox thinkers. Yet his conclusions, proving God through reason alone, provide powerful ammunition against rising atheism. Jansenists embrace his sharp distinction between spirit and matter to defend human dignity. Jesuits, despite initial suspicion, adapt his arguments for their own theological battles. The Index of Forbidden Books receives his works, but enforcement varies wildly. Banned in one diocese, required reading in another. His revolution proves too useful to suppress entirely. Science claims him as a founding father, though often by misunderstanding. The mechanical universe he envisioned, matter in motion, governed by mathematical laws, propels investigation forward even when his specific theories crumble. Boyle transforms alchemy into chemistry using Cartesian principles. Harvey explains blood circulation through mechanical pumps and valves. Newton builds on Cartesian foundations while demolishing Cartesian physics. The vortices of swirling matter replaced by mysterious action at a distance. The method matters more than the man, the approach outliving its applications. The Enlightenment philosophers hail him as liberator, the one who freed reason from authority's chains. If individuals can discover truth through methodical thinking, why accept inherited power in politics or religion? Voltaire and Diderot trace their intellectual genealogy to that warm room in Germany, where one man dared to doubt everything. The same critical spirit that questioned Aristotelian physics questions absolute monarchy, religious orthodoxy, social hierarchy. Conservative critics aren't wrong to see revolution lurking in his method, just wrong about whether it can be stopped. British empiricists define themselves against him, rejecting innate ideas while accepting his focus on individual consciousness. Locke's blank slate opposes Cartesian pre-programming, yet both start from the thinking self. Berkeley pushes idealism to extremes Descartes never imagined. Hume awakens Kant from dogmatic slumber by showing where pure reason leads, not to certainty, but to skepticism about causation, identity, even the external world. The Cartesian project generates its own opposition. Thesis breeding antithesis in philosophy's endless dialogue. Modern neuroscience can be read as an empirical assault on his dualism, yet it operates within frameworks he established. When researchers map neural correlates of consciousness, they're still grappling with his fundamental question, how does matter produce mind? Cognitive science treats thoughts as computational processes, but computation itself descends from his vision of mechanical reasoning. Even artificial intelligence research echoes Cartesian themes. If thinking defines existence, can machines think? Do chatbots dream of electric sheep, or merely simulate dreaming's outputs? Contemporary philosophy of mind remains haunted by problems he articulated. The hard problem of consciousness, how subjective experience arises from objective processes, is his mind-body problem in modern dress. Thought experiments about brains in vats update his evil demon for the Matrix age. When philosophers debate whether consciousness can be uploaded to computers, they're extending arguments that began in his meditations. The vocabulary changes, the core puzzles persist. His mathematical legacy needs no defense. Every student who graphs a parabola, every engineer who calculates trajectories, every programmer who positions pixels on screens uses tools he forged. The coordinate plane makes the invisible visible, turns relationships into pictures, enables precise manipulation of abstract objects. Modern physics would be literally unthinkable without the mathematical framework he helped create. From GPS satellites to quantum mechanics, his geometric vision underlies technologies he couldn't have imagined. But perhaps his deepest influence lies in the method itself, the call to think carefully, doubt systematically, accept only what survives scrutiny. In our age of information overload, when truth seems to drown in noise, his 4 simple rules offer timeless guidance. Accept nothing without evidence. Break complex problems into parts. Build from simple to complex. Review everything to ensure completeness. Not a recipe for certainty, he learned that certainty has limits, but a discipline for approaching uncertainty with courage and clarity. The personal computer on your desk embodies his vision more fully than he could have dreamed. Its coordinate graphics display geometric relationships. Its binary logic implements mechanical reasoning. Its programs follow step-by-step procedures, from simple operations to complex results. Yet the mind contemplating the screen remains as mysterious as ever. The ghost in the machine still haunting silicon and copper as it once haunted flesh and bone. Technology advances by assuming his mechanical worldview while leaving his deepest questions unanswered. Educational reform movements echo his democratizing impulse. If a French gentleman with no special authority can discover fundamental truths through reason alone, why shouldn't every child learn to think systematically? Progressive pedagogies that emphasize discovery over memorization, understanding over recitation, trace their roots to his revolutionary idea that method matters more than content. The teacher becomes guide rather than oracle, helping students find their own paths to clarity. Even his failures prove instructive. The pineal gland theory seems absurd now, but the impulse behind it, to find where mind meets brain, drives contemporary neuroscience. His confidence that reason alone could unlock nature's secrets needed tempering with experimentation. But that confidence launched the scientific enterprise. His separation of mind from body created problems we still wrestle with, but it also protected human dignity from crude materialism. Sometimes philosophy advances through productive errors, mistakes that force deeper thinking. Modern therapy often echoes his introspective method. Cognitive behavioral therapy asks patients to examine their thoughts systematically, question assumptions, rebuild healthier patterns of thinking. The therapeutic hour becomes a Cartesian meditation. Doubt applied to destructive beliefs rather than metaphysical principles. When therapists teach mindfulness, observing thoughts without judgment, they're training a skill he pioneered, the ability to step back from immediate experience and examine consciousness itself. His influence on language and literature runs deeper than most realize. The clarity and precision he demanded of philosophical prose helped shape modern French, stripping away medieval ornament for direct expression. Writers from Stendhal to Sartre inherit his psychological acuity, his attention to consciousness in all its complexity. The novel itself, with its exploration of interior life, owes debts to his elevation of subjective experience as philosophically significant. Stream of consciousness techniques make literary art from the flow of thoughts he first mapped. Political philosophy bears his mark in the emphasis on individual rights and rational consent. If each person possesses reason capable of discovering truth, traditional justifications for authority crumble. The social contract must be rebuilt on rational grounds, power legitimated through argument rather than tradition. Revolutionary movements from 1776 to 1789 and beyond weaponize Cartesian doubt against established orders. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Jefferson channels Descartes, clear and distinct ideas applied to human equality. Contemporary debates about consciousness, free will, and personal identity replay Cartesian themes with modern variations. When bioethicists argue about brain death, they're asking when the thinking thing departs. When philosophers debate whether teleportation would preserve identity, they're probing the relationship between mind and body he first problematized. Virtual reality raises his skeptical scenarios as lived experience. How do we know which reality is real? The questions persist because they touch something fundamental about human existence. His vision of philosophy as meditation rather than doctrine offers a practice, not just principles. The meditations invite readers to undergo the same journey, to discover truths through their own thinking rather than accepting them on authority. This performative dimension, philosophy as something you do, not just study, influences everything from phenomenology to pragmatism. The examined life becomes not just an ideal, but a method, a daily practice of thoughtful reflection. In Silicon Valley startups and Wall Street trading floors, his reduction of complex problems to simple steps guides algorithm design and decision trees. Management consultants unknowingly apply Cartesian method when they break business challenges into components. Analyze each systematically, synthesize solutions. The PowerPoint slide that builds arguments from bullet points descends from his rules for directing the mind. Corporate culture speaks his language without knowing its source. Yet something essential in his vision resists reduction to mere technique. The wonder that drove him, at mathematics' mysterious certainty, at consciousness' irreducible reality, at the sheer strangeness of existence, cannot be proceduralized. His method aimed not at mechanical problem-solving, but at authentic understanding, the aha moment when confusion yields to clarity. In our age of artificial intelligence and automated reasoning, this human dimension of his project matters more than ever. Critics across centuries have found much to attack. His physics collapsed quickly. His physiology misunderstood almost everything. His confidence in pure reason seems naive after Freud revealed the unconscious, after history showed reason serving terrible ends. The masculine, solitary ego he enshrined as philosophy's starting point excludes other ways of knowing, communal, embodied, emotional. Feminist philosophers note how his disembodied mind resembles male privilege, free to think because others handle life's messy realities. Yet the critical tradition itself depends on tools he sharpened. The demand for clarity, the skepticism toward received wisdom, the confidence that reason can challenge power. These Cartesian gifts enable even anti-Cartesian arguments. Philosophy's ability to question its own foundations, to doubt its own doubters, to think about thinking, flows from the revolution he began. We are all his children, especially when we rebel against him. As midnight approaches and you prepare for sleep, consider his enduring invitation. Not to accept his conclusions, he wouldn't want that, but to think with his courage, to question what seems obvious, to seek clarity in confusion, to trust your own reason while acknowledging its limits. The thinking thing that you are connects you across centuries to that solitary figure in the heated room, wrestling with the deepest questions. Your consciousness, mysterious as ever, proves his point simply by pondering it. Tomorrow's problems will demand new thinking, but the tools remain surprisingly constant. Break complexity into manageable parts. Build understanding systematically. Question assumptions. Test conclusions. Above all, maintain the wonder that drives inquiry, the dissatisfaction with easy answers that pushes toward truth. His method offers not a fortress against uncertainty, but a way of navigating it with dignity and hope. The world spins on, more connected and chaotic than he could have imagined. Information floods our devices. Opinions masquerade as facts. Algorithms shape our choices in ways we barely perceive. Yet in this tumult, his call for clear and distinct ideas rings more urgently than ever. Not as dogma, but as discipline. Not as final answers, but as a way of questioning that keeps human dignity intact. The hermit's code lives whenever someone stops, thinks, and refuses to accept the unexamined. In the end, Descartes gives us permission to doubt, to question, to think for ourselves. In a world that often demands conformity, he whispers, "Your mind is your own. Use it, trust it carefully, build from certainty, however small." The journey from radical doubt to grounded knowledge can be walked again and again, each time revealing new landscapes. The warm room awaits, not in Germany but in your own contemplation. The revolution continues with each mind that dares to think. As you settle into sleep tonight, carry with you Descartes' most precious gift, the recognition that in a world of uncertainty and change, the one thing you can never doubt is your own existence as a thinking, feeling, questioning being. This isn't merely an abstract philosophical principle, but a lived truth available to you in every moment of consciousness. When tomorrow brings its inevitable confusions, when certainty seems as elusive as morning mist, remember that warm room in Germany where one man discovered that the very act of doubting confirms the doubter's existence. Your thoughts, however fleeting or troubled, prove your reality more surely than any external authority ever could. This is his enduring legacy, not a system of answers, but a foundation of unshakable selfhood from which all genuine inquiry begins. The hermit who cracked the code of existence offers you more than clever arguments or mathematical tools. He gives you permission to trust your own reason while acknowledging its limits, to seek clarity without demanding impossible certainty, to build understanding step by careful step. In our age of information overload, when truth drowns in noise and opinions masquerade as facts, his method provides a compass for navigation. Accept nothing without evidence. Break complexity into manageable parts. Build from simple to complex. Review everything to ensure completeness. These aren't rigid rules, but gentle guides, ways of approaching life's puzzles with both courage and humility. Let his courage in doubting everything inspire your own intellectual honesty. And may his discovery of unshakable truth within the depths of solitude remind you that sometimes the most profound answers come not from the noise of the world, but from the quiet certainty of your own reflective mind. The thinking thing that you are connects you across 4 centuries to that solitary figure wrestling with existence itself. Your consciousness, mysterious as his, proves itself simply by pondering these words. Tomorrow you'll wake to a world that spins faster than Descartes could have imagined, yet the tools he forged remain surprisingly relevant. The discipline of clear thinking, the confidence in reason's power, the recognition that your mind is your own sacred space. Rest now in that certainty, and let it guide you gently into peaceful dreams. The warm room awaits not in some distant past, but in your own contemplation, whenever you choose to enter it. Sleep well, thinking thing, and may your dreams be clear and distinct.